Climate change is destabilizing the planet's ecosystems and threatening the well-being of current and future generations. And to hold the increase in global temperature between, or rather below 2 degrees Celsius, according to the Paris Climate Agreement, and avoid dangerous climate change, deep cuts in global greenhouse gas emissions are urgently required. The global livestock sector contributes a significant share to emissions, but it can also deliver a significant share of the necessary mitigation effort. The Global Research Alliance on Agricultural Greenhouse Gases has been working together to provide practical and science-based support to countries seeking to achieve green growth through livestock. And to tell us more, we joined in the studio by Ackim Mwape, who is Africa Program Coordinator of the Global Research Alliance, as well as Beth, Madden, who is Acting High Commissioner of New Zealand here in South Africa. Both of you, welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Colin.
Tell us a little bit about the Global Research Alliance and what it does.
Thanks, Colin, and thanks for having us. The Global Research Alliance on Agriculture Greenhouse Gases is simply a network of governments that are interested in agriculture greenhouse gases and their impacts on climate change and food security. The alliance brings together countries with a goal of finding better ways of increasing productivity without growing greenhouse gas emission. So this is kind of like a framework for global action to increase cooperation and also investment in research, because this is what we need to address this situation that we are faced with.
So what are some of the concerns that have been raised in the workshop that you've had with this interministerial and departmental gatherings that have been raising the issue of emissions?
3 major concerns have been raised, Colin. The first one is on partnerships, because climate change is a complex problem. Some sectors of the community have referred to it as a wicked problem, meaning that there is no silver bullet that we can have to address its impacts. It requires concerted effort, collaboration. No one nation can provide us a solution. There is a lot that we do not know about this. However, the only thing that we may be certain of for now is that the lower our emissions can be, the better for the climate.
Okay, later on we'll touch on how does the agricultural sector remain productive even though they have to reduce the emissions. But rather, let's understand it from a policy perspective with New Zealand in place. What are some of your concerns and insights regarding how you view climate change and emissions and the sub-Saharan Africa?
Thank you. So climate change is a big deal for New Zealand. It's a priority for our government. We take our climate change commitments very seriously. Our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has called it the greatest issue of our generation. And that's because, as you can see, all around the world, we've seen lots of different instances where climate change has affected economies. We've seen that in this region, in our region, all across the world. So it's very important for us to work, as Ackim was saying, with our partners globally, and that includes with our partners in the Southern African region, to see what we can do to mitigate some of these issues and try to adapt to climate change effects.
You know, it's interesting that you're talking about partnerships, and one would wonder there are some countries who are really, obstinate when it comes to coming to the party and agreeing to what all other countries of the world are saying, that climate change is a very serious phenomenon and it can have very negative implications for future generations. Now, how is this process frustrating the whole engagement when you have, for example, the US saying, no, we're not even going to take climate change seriously?
For us, it's about collaboration and speaking with our partners all over the globe that do want to work with us on some of these schemes and some of these alliances. So we're working with our partners, whether it be in Southern Africa or throughout the world, to see what we can do. Every little bit counts.
So now the question that I alluded to earlier regarding how then do you reduce emissions and referring to livestock, how do you do that whilst the sector is remaining productive?
Yep. There are a lot of initiatives that could be put in place, Colin. Some of the basic things that we could simply do is just to ensure that we increase the productivity of our livestock. Once we focus on productivity, for example, if we could provide better quality feeds for our livestock, ensure that our farmers have the knowledge of managing their livestock, those small interventions could have greater global contributions and impacts.
So from the workshop as a way forward, what points have you adopted?
So during the workshop, it was about meeting and greeting everybody, being able to build connections, to share a way forward, to come up with a plan for the way forward and what we can do and how we can work together, how we can share technologies, we can share research, science, different innovation. So it's really about how we can work together and coming up with a plan.
Yeah. So from the livestock perspective, do you think that the SADC region is in jeopardy looking at the various climatic changes that we have been experiencing? For example, you will have a prolonged rainy season and it would affect planting seasons, and then also you will have harvesting being affected, then not the chicken feed but the feeds to different types of animals or livestock being delayed to arrive. And for the past 3 years, when you have been observing the trend and the impact of drought on subsistence farmers, they've really suffered in terms of sicknesses and diseases for their livestock and not being able to function productively by then. Yeah. So with this downside or this negative impact of drought and climate change on farming, what are the suggestions that are being made through your partnership?
Collins, there's a lot of research which is going on within the SADC region and across the world. But the challenge that we are having now is that there is a clear disconnect or a clear gap between policy and research. Most of the research is just remaining within the universities and it's not feeding on to our policies. So we need to close that gap between policy and research to ensure that we enable our policymakers to make better decisions, and those decisions will trickle down. Even our farmers will be in a much better position to make a better decision in managing their livestock or agriculture.
He is making a very interesting point regarding the delay and lack of synergy between research and policy. How's the situation in New Zealand and how does it relate to farmers?
I mean, one of the reasons why we established the Global Research Alliance was so that we could have this better synergy between the two, and not only for New Zealand, but for all of the members of the GRA as well, and anybody who is interested in that. So this is one of the ways in which we're trying to address that.
So that comparatively speaking, do you think that the problem he's raising regarding policy implementation would then lead to a delay and flat-footedness on the agricultural sector on emerging economies as compared to New Zealand, where things could be probably at an advanced stage? Then how do you partner with countries that have an imbalance regarding Australia being advanced and emerging economies struggling to gain traction?
I think it's a challenge for all policymakers to be able to keep up with the science and make sure that the technologies are there as well. But I think it's about us speaking with each other, making sure that everybody's got access to the most recent science, to the different technologies, and then working together to have the right policies.
Okay, so now just to elaborate a little bit on the issue of livestock, and you were telling us about science research related matters. What would your advice be for somebody who, like from a pedestrian view, in taking care and taking seriously how climate change will impact them? Because this is a subject that could be Greek to other farmers out there who don't know what we are talking about as we speak.
I think the onus is on us as policymakers and researchers, I think including the media. We have a responsibility to ensure that this message trickles down and The message is that everyone's contributions count. Whatever each and every country would be able to contribute, that contribution is significant at the global level. As I said in my initial remarks, this is not a situation that can be sorted out by an individual country. Everyone has to come to the party. And this is exactly what we are doing through the Global Research Alliance. We are bringing partners together, bringing countries together. And countries like South Africa have taken up a leadership role in the SADC region, and we are grateful to the South African government for what it is doing within the alliance.
All right. Thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
Thank you so much.
All right, we're speaking here to Ackim Mwape, who is the African Program Director at the Global Research Alliance, as well as Beth, Madden, who is the Acting Commissioner of New Zealand here in South Africa. And of course, looking on to other news.